G'day guys, jF2P here again, bringing you my how-to medic guide, and in this guide I'll be going over some very important basics and also some competitive strategies. Now, you're probably thinking that the medic, just like the heavy, is actually very easy to play, but there are a few tricks to playing him to ensure that you don't die all the time and that you're doing the best job you can. Under the assumption that this is the first time that you're playing Medic in Team Fortress 2, this is the Medic loadout which you're offered, and it is perfectly viable. Consists of the syringe gun, the medigun, and the bone saw. Now the syringe gun I generally only used when I am backed in a corner and or are running away. The medigun is what you use to heal your targets and build Ubers, which wins games, people. And finally you have the bone saw, but I generally only use the bone saw when I run out of ammo with the syringe gun, but the bone saw does a fair bit of damage and should not be underestimated. Anyways, as you play more medic, you'll unlock more weapons and such, and you experiment with loadouts. These are the three loadouts I use. The first one is the overdose, the medigun, and the UberSaw. Now the UberSaw is a melee weapon for the medic, which gives you 25% UberCharge with each successive hit. And this can be game-changing in a competitive setting where things are driven largely upon Uber advantages. Also another neat trick is while you're Ubered, you can pull out your saw and still hit people with it, and it will still add another 25%, allowing your Uber to last longer. Now, try not to get too carried away with hitting people with your Uber saw, because that'll often just get you killed, and nobody wants that. Anyways, moving along to the overdose, the mechanics of the overdose and the syringe gun are pretty much exactly the same. It does pretty minimal damage, and if you want to try and hit people with it, you gotta try and spam it into the direction which you think they're going to be traveling. I mainly use it for retreating, like this pyro's mouse wanting me down, and I fire some needles in his direction, which repels him and stops him from chasing me. Anyways, moving along to the next loadout, I use the Crusader's crossbow, the kritkreig, and the amputator. Now the kritkreig, unlike the medigun, offers 100% critical hits for 8 seconds, and also it allows you to heal yourself on taunt, although the health you gain is negligible and it does leave you for attacks like, oh hey, an enemy soldier. Anyways, moving right along. Now, the reason I use the Crusader's crossbow and the amputator together is because it gives you +1 health regenerated per second, which comes in handy in so many situations. Now the Crusader's crossbow itself, it's a projectile weapon, so it will take a bit of time to learn to use, but it can attack and also heal people, which comes in handy in so many situations. So this can make for some epic heals and some epic kills. Now don't get too caught up in trying to use this weapon, because otherwise you are just going to miss and look like an absolute tit and die, like in that clip. Now the third loadout I like to use is pretty much the same as before, except instead of the amputator and the kritkreig, it's the UberSaw and the medigun. Now you can use this with the kritkreig as well, but I find the gain that you get from the UberSaw is really only worth it with the medigun, considering the amount of risk that's involved with using it. I find with the kritkreig survivability is way more important, and that's why I use the amputator, so I get the extra health per second. Now, there are also other mediguns which you will gain, which you can also use, like the Vaccinator and the Quick Fix, and they are both perfectly viable, but I wouldn't use them unless there is another medic on your team, and before you've used the other two extensively. Now, we're going to talk about some basic concepts. Now the first and arguably most important concept is overhealing everybody on your team whenever possible. So now I'll just run some quick maths by you. Imagine you have one of each class on your team, just like in Highlander. Their health averages out to about 175, and when you fully buff a target with 175 it goes to 260. This makes for a difference between teams if one's fully buffed and one isn't, of 765 HP. Now this means that is 4 extra players of health on the opposing team, and that is 4 extra players of health that the enemy team has to get rid of in order to clear its enemies, and this can create a massive advantage, so it's extremely important to do that. The next concept is finding reliable pockets, and by this I mean targets which you can heal and stick with, which will both A, keep you alive, and B, deal considerable damage and be worth having the constant heals on them. This doesn't mean that you stick on them and don't heal anyone else at all, it just means it's someone that you can stick to to heal so that you don't die. Now the heavy is an obvious choice. He, when fully buffed, has 450 HP, so he is ridiculously tanky, and he has an extremely high amount of DPS, and he gives you sandwiches, which heals you for half health. Who doesn't want that? Look, sandwiches! Which is probably the best thing about the heavy. And look, 2 pyros, not a problem, I'll just stand here and just gun them both down. Doesn't even matter. And because of all this, the heavy is very good at protecting you, even from spies, given the spammability of his bullets, easily picking up that spy there. And also, the heavy has a very large model, so it's very easy for you to hide behind him and let him soak up all the damage for you, which is very, very handy. Now, another suitable target for pocketing is the soldier. Now, the soldier isn't as tanky as the heavy, but he can deal out a fair bit of damage, and he's also a lot better at protecting you from scouts than the heavy, given the splash damage of his rockets. Although he does have limited amount of ammo, so the amount of damage you can put out is limited. But where the soldier shines the most is in his mobility, the ability to jump into enemies, cause damage, and to come straight back, and also to take out key threats. Like here I call out the roaming soldier to my soldier, and he comes straight back round and takes him out for me. Now, the Demoman. You do want to pocket the Demoman because he deals an insane amount of damage. Like here, popping the crits and clearing the players up ahead with ease. Ubers are also very viable in the Demoman as well, because he does a lot of damage without Ubers as well, and takes out buildings extremely easily. Now, onto a subject which a lot of new players really seem to struggle with, and that is when to Uber. Now, at the start of a round, you really only want to Uber if you're getting spammed out. If you're playing on a map like Dust Bowl, you're pretty much going to have to Uber out of spawn every time, because you just get spammed out so much. On this map, on Gold Rush, you also generally have to Uber out of spawn, because you just get spammed out, and the task of leaving spawn and pushing the cart becomes an extremely difficult one. Now, there are certain situations where it's not always as apparent, like, for instance, this map on Dust Bowl, there is a big open area, and you don't always have to Uber. There we really had to, because I took a lot of damage, and if I took any more, I would have dropped Uber, which is extremely shameful. Dropping Uber is when you die with a full UberCharge. Now, here is an instance where I have Uber, and I decide not to use it. I don't panic here and be like, oh my god, it's a spy! I decide to hold on to it, bring it round, and bring it to the sentry gun, and then pop Uber. Another extremely important concept is make sure you're running between the sentry gun and your Uber target, as you negate the knockback from the sentry gun, allowing your Uber target to take out the buildings a lot easier. Now, another time you're going to have to Uber is when reacting to situations like here. I see an Ubered heavy, and I'm like, shit. So I just Uber the pyro, who's able to neutralize that enemy Uber quite successfully, pushing the enemy into the hole. Another thing that's often going to happen is you're going to find yourself caught out without an Uber target. Now, don't try and find somebody and then Uber. Just pop it, make sure you stay alive, because an alive medic is a lot better than a dead medic. And there, the Uber turned out to be quite effective, and my team is able to clean up quite well, and we capture the midpoint quite convincingly. Now here, I see a kritkreig flash, and I'm like, oh! And I pop straight away. You do not want to take any chances there, because a crit sticky will one-shot you, and as we have mentioned, dropping Uber is a big no-no. Just like here, I'm just chilling out with heavy, and then all of a sudden, oh, Crockett! And we just pop it, and negate it quite successfully. You really do not want to drop Ubers. It's almost a bit of a shame when it happens. Now, flashing a Uber is another important concept, which really isn't that difficult. It's just a matter of letting go of left click and then clicking on another target, and then doing the same when you want to flash another target. You want to really try and do this as the person is about to take damage, as you saw there, as this really allows you to maximize your Uber to its fullest potential. Now, positioning is something that is extremely important as medic, and something that new players need to get into their heads. At choke points, you really want to have, ideally, as many friendly players as possible between you and the enemy, trying to stand off to the side and behind cover if possible. If you walk out into the open, you'll most likely get focused down and die, which is no fun for anyone, because then your medic doesn't have a team to heal them, and, well, you're dead. Like here, I come around the corner and I see, whoop, a soldier, don't want any part of that, come back and heal the Demoman, and then Uber him as soon as I acquire Uber. It also pays sometimes to lead your target when you're Ubered so that he has an idea of where to go, but as soon as your Uber's about to run out, get out of there because you do not want to die when it's over. And here we took control of the front area, so I'm standing off to the side and letting that soldier clear out the left tunnel. Now spies, these guys will ruin your day and thwart your plans if you let them. If they backstab you, they can drop your Uber and no one wants that. Basically, just look for people that look suspicious and give them a quick spy check, either with your saw, with your needle gun, or with your Crusader's crossbow. And if you check them with the saw, you're probably going to give them a crit saw, and spies absolutely hate that. Now, onto the topic of getting away. Sometimes you'll take damage as a medic and you won't feel safe in the current location where you are. In this case, just tell your team you're going to be running away and where to regroup. Here I decided to go in the underpass to collect the health pack and meet up with my team round on the other side. Now, getting away as far as avoiding damage, sometimes you just have to move as erratically as possible. And here you can see this demo man is not really effectively protecting me from this scout, and you can see he is not really that effective at taking out the scout himself. And here I'm just running in a very erratic pattern and trying not to get hit. Now onto rocket surfing. This is where you use an enemy rocket's knockback to your advantage as an escape mechanism. This is very useful for getting away in tricky situations, and is done simply by jumping and crouching relative to where you want to be launched into. The best way to learn how to do this is to simply learn how to rocket jump properly as a soldier, getting used to air strafing and all that jazz. And now for the last part of the video, which is the longest, and that is some basic competitive strategies. This won't teach you how to be the best medic ever, but we'll just give you some of the basic ideas that you need to have in your mind when you're doing pugs and stuff like that. Now, Highlander is probably the first place that you should try and play some sort of competitive medic, mainly because all the concepts that you need to know in it are basically the same as the ones I've mentioned before, except not dying is a lot more important than it was before. Basically, you're just going to have to be a lot more reserved, be a lot more careful, especially of spies and especially of snipers, because they can take you out so easily, and then it puts your team at such a huge disadvantage. And you also want to hear it if the enemy medic has gone down. If you have an Uber and the enemy medic has gone down, you can push straight back into them, because by the time your Uber is run out, the enemy medic would have respawned and you'll be at no significant Uber disadvantage, and also you would have pushed the enemy back significantly and made a massive advantage for your team. On to sixes. Arguably the most important thing is knowing how to do the rollout. What you want to do is heal the demo man for as long as possible and then try and buff your scouts. And then you will want to be with your roaming soldier who will stick with you on the way out. There are variations to this of course, but this is the basic idea of how to do things. Then your pocket soldier will be equalizing to mid and will unequip it just before you get there. You'll have crit heals on him and quickly get him to full buff straight away. In regards to things like using your Uber saw, you only really want to use it if you're backed in a corner or if you think there's a situation where you can have an advantage, because getting 25% Uber instantly is a massive advantage to make. Here I really mess up and lose focus and I try and run away. Here at a very big disadvantage, but just doing what I can, trying to move erratically, manage to get 2 Uber saw hits and get out of there, which means I have 50% Uber just from that. And now here, you're going to have to watch out for bombing soldiers. Pop, don't drop. That rule still applies. Sometimes they will be hard to see, but you saw in the top left corner him rocket jumping, and I looked up and saw him come. Also, when making pushes with Uber, it doesn't hurt to pop early, otherwise embarrassing things like that happen. Even there was a bit late to Uber, as my teammates and myself took a fair bit of damage in the process and will put us in a bad position when we get out of Uber. Luckily, we managed to live and capture last point. Here, some terrible positioning gets me killed, but distracting the soldier actually manages us to cap the point. And also, when all else fails and you're not sure what to do, just stick with your pocket soldier, because you and your pocket soldier will do plenty of work. There I just followed my pocket soldier who just walked around the enemy literally, and we went straight into last and capped it. Here I'm just with my pocket soldier and the demo man bombs in. He calls just to pop it because he reckons he can take out the demo man, and he thought without their demo man they couldn't make an effective push. And with that Uber we managed to take out 2 players, which in 6v6 is a considerable amount. And also, when you're playing medic, you want to try and be in positions such as here, where you can easily dispense heals onto your team, but are also in a position to quickly get away if a threat comes along, such as a bombing soldier or an enemy Uber. And finally, just make sure you are moving erratically, because occasionally they will run snipers, and also when you're getting chased down by scouts, it's a lot harder for them to hit you if you're not running in a straight line and are running quite erratically. And of course, don't forget to listen to your team, because your team is going to be asking you for heals, but will also call out any threats that may be present to you. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this. I do hope you have learnt something today, and I know my competitive section might not have been perfect, but I think it gives a basic understanding of what is required. And of course, nothing will make you a better player than actually playing the game. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I hope to see you again next time in my next video. Take it easy, guys.